You did what every successful leader is expected to do. You stepped up, you delivered results. You built credibility and you earned trust. And as performance held, it felt like you were becoming the leader you set out to be. But there's a truth most leaders never hear clearly. Success inside a system doesn't build your identity. It just builds alignment. And that alignment, it can quietly become your ceiling, long before you realize it's there. I was a top performing wealth advisor, leader, and executive in the wealth management industry for 23 consecutive years, building and running multi-billion-dollar businesses. Few ever get insider access to what it actually takes to reach the top levels in this business. I launched EliteVate to change that. This is my mission. So what are you going to learn today? 1, how your leadership is shaped by the system alignment and how it can quietly replace your real ownership. 2, where success starts narrowing judgment without you realizing it. 3, why stability that feels like progress can actually limit your range as a leader. And 4, how seeing these patterns clearly restores control over your direction. Your leadership identity doesn't form through intention. It forms through your response. And quietly, the system will teach you what gets praised, what gets protected, and actually what creates friction. And the more effective you become inside the system, the harder that translation is to notice, because those results create agreement. And you don't just lose your identity, it gets translated. And that's how the system identity forms. Not through your weakness, but through reinforcement. So I'm going to walk you through the 3 areas that make up this identity. The first being ownership. You know you came into leading with your approach, your judgment, your standards, and your way of building. And the environment started to move. Quarterly priorities shifted, messaging above changed. The new leaders above you brought a new direction, and your cadence, it tightened. And as that happened, your peers around you, they began adjusting just to match it. Not because they believed in it, but because adapting was easier than redefining themselves. And when they did this, their consistency, it got praised. Their stability, it gets rewarded. And that comment around don't make any noise travels faster than leadership. So eventually you adjust too. And at first it's just to stay aligned. Then it's to keep things smooth. And gradually the business stops being something you're shaping and becomes something you're just maintaining. And when you're still trying to build while others around you are maintaining, trust me, the room will get very quiet. Your team reads your conviction. They'll move in the direction your identity points, not the one you talk about. So if your voice goes quiet, theirs will too. If your standards start to lower, theirs will too. If you stop building, the business stops evolving. And most leaders, they never stall because of their skill. They stall because of their identity drift. And I understand that pressure to align because staying true to your way of leading comes with a cost. Over my years of leadership, I watched the system change around me constantly. New priorities, new messaging, new leaders above me, everyone adjusting. But I noticed something early. If you let this system reshape how you lead once, it will reshape you every time it changes. And trust me, it always changes. So I didn't let the environment decide who I was or how I led. I stayed anchored in my way of leading and built from that. I took what was useful from the system, but I did not let the system define my identity. So here are a few things I want you to examine about your ownership. This isn't about environmental changing. It's about noticing where you adjust yourself to fit it. And the question isn't whether you're performing, it's whether you're still leading the way you set out all along. So the first thing, look at how you're actually running your business day to day and ask yourself whether it's being run the way you believe it should be run or whether you're operating inside something that's been outlined so clearly it no longer gets questioned. Because those two may look the same on the surface, but they're not the same underneath. How about how you lead your conversations? You need to pay attention to how you show up in your conversations. Are you speaking from your judgment or from messaging that's easy to defend if someone above you asks why? And that shift, it's very subtle. But once it happens, your voice stops leading and starts translating. How about your priorities? Let's look at how your priorities get set. Are they shaped by the direction you believe in or by what keeps the quarter clean, predictable, and quiet? Because one is leadership, but the other is maintenance. And finally, how do you show up every day? When you walk into the business each day, are you actually leading? Or are you protecting what already has been handed to you? Because those are very different postures, even if the calendar looks full. So let's look at the next one, ego. And this isn't ego the way most people describe it. It's not arrogance, it's not your control. It forms after you have success. When your judgment works, your decisions get reinforced, and your results, they hold. But at the same time, you start seeing the pattern. Your direction, it comes from above. Your signals, they're all consistent. And certain paths that you take get rewarded faster than others. And internally, you may question it. You may even know that there's a better way, but your behavior, it doesn't change. Because redefining direction here comes with a risk. Because if you go against it and it doesn't work for you, you're exposed. And if you align it, it works, you get protected. So that alignment, it doesn't feel like giving something up. It feels smart, it feels mature, and it feels like your leadership. And that's where ego actually locks in. Not as dominance, but as certainty you no longer question. Yeah, you'll still ask for input, you'll still invite discussions, but outcomes are already shaped early. And you see it. You'll have meetings that start open, but they close predictably. The ideas are welcomed, but only the ones that fit the approved direction it travels for. And this is not because you don't value other people's thinking, but because you've learned which thinking survives here. And this shows up in decisions long before any relationships. You favor paths that are easier to defend upward. You shorten exploration to protect momentum. And you choose options you already understand. And this is not because you're closed off, but because being wrong now carries more weight than it used to. And this is very familiar to me, because when success stacks up, it's easier to trust what's already been reinforced, to move faster, to narrow earlier, to stop questioning things at work. And this is not because you stop thinking, but because you've learned where friction lives and how expensive it can be. So I had to stay conscious of where my certainty was coming from, my judgment, or the system I was getting very good at running. Because once certainty isn't yours, ego doesn't announce itself. It just starts deciding for you. And that's all ego needs. So let's look at what to examine and see this as a leadership diagnostic, not a judgment. How about your decision ownership? Think about the last decision that felt obvious, the kind where there wasn't much debate. Ask yourself, did it feel obvious because it was clearly right, or because it was already safe? And that distinction matters more than you want to admit. And what about your exploration tolerance? Notice how much space you actually allow before direction tightens. Do you explore ideas to truly learn, or do you explore them just enough to confirm what already fits? And those two, they feel very similar, but they lead to very different ranges. And what about your risk asymmetry? Pay attention to which risk feels unacceptable now that didn't earlier in your career. Are you avoiding bad outcomes, or are you just avoiding exposure? Because once exposure becomes the bigger threat for you, judgment starts narrowing quietly. And what about your alignment reflex? When pressure shows up, watch your reflex. Does it widen your perspective, or do you return harder to what already works? And that reflex will tell you more about ego than intent ever will, because these questions do the real work. They'll force you to confront your dependence, not your behavior. And finally, let's discuss comfort. You think you're evolving because you move fast, you align early, and you adapt quickly. In your business, it keeps moving. Direction stays clear, your results, they don't fall apart. And to you, it feels like growth. But most aren't actually evolving. All they're doing is maintaining the identity the system rewarded them years ago. And when direction shifts, you're the first to respond. And it feels like evolution to you, but it's only, again, identity maintenance. And the system always reinforces it. You adapt, you get recognition, you receive more scope. And your identity, it continues to strengthen. And it looks like momentum to you. But what's growing is your responsiveness, not your capability. And your world, it may expand horizontally. People, complexities, more visibility. But your leadership, it doesn't deepen. So why does this matter? Because comfort doesn't feel like complacency. It feels like competence. And your patterns, they'll stabilize. Your teams, they know exactly how you respond. And your peers and partners, they can predict your posture. And your steadiness, the thing that once built trust, starts reading like limitation. More scope feels like growth, but systems reward compliance long before they reward maturity. So you eventually get more of a job you already know, inside an environment changing faster than you are. And that's how your relevance decays quietly. And I could feel how easy it would be to confuse speed with growth, because the system always rewards those who move fast, line early, and keep things steady. And if you're not careful, that starts feeling like evolution to you. So I watched for it. I paid attention to when things felt too comfortable instead of challenging, when my scope was growing faster than my range, and when my familiarity started sounding like maturity. And I took what worked from the system, but I didn't let stability ever replace my awareness, because that's where you're going to stop evolving without ever realizing you did. So this is what you should examine. And this is the part most leaders skip, because nothing feels broken. And that's exactly why it matters. Let's start off with evolution lens. Ask yourself honestly, do I treat speed and alignment as proof that I'm evolving? Or is it just proof that I'm still useful to the system? And those are not the same thing, even if they get rewarded the same way. And let's look at your range. Has your decision-making and strategic depth actually expanded, or has your will just gotten wider? And you know, more people, more scope, more visibility doesn't automatically mean more leadership maturity. And then what about your identity anchor? And I want you to be honest about this one. Are you leading from who you are now, or from the version of you the system first rewarded? Because the system, it's very good at validating an identity long after it stops stretching you. And what about your interpretation? When new direction shows up, notice what you do with it. Do you translate it, make sense of it, integrate it, and protect your team's clarity? Or do you adopt it and expect everyone else to adjust without losing their footing? And that difference is where comfort either protects growth or quietly replaces it. Because once you see how identity actually forms, through ownership, through ego, and through comfort, you don't just get to unsee it. Because the real risk isn't that you're doing something wrong. It's that you're letting the system decide how you lead long after you're capable of more. And once that becomes clear, the question isn't if you change. It's how long you're willing to keep operating inside something that no longer fits the leader you know you can be. Every week, I break down the real strategies behind top performance for wealth advisors and leaders ready to operate the level they've been built for. This is EliteVate. We cut through the fluff, no hype, no theory, just strategy, psychology, and execution. If this hits home, subscribe. You're not just watching and learning. You will become the model others follow.